In the heart of the desert, where thirst and fear test the limits of survival, one voice whispers with absolute certainty: be water. Old Billy's Tale Connection is more than a story. It's a journey through life, death, gratitude, and the infinite web that unites us all. Here, water becomes the symbol of transformation. Death becomes a teacher, and connection reveals itself as the very pulse of existence.
Join us as we explore this powerful narrative of surrender, desire, and awakening, and discover how connection is not something we create, but something we recognize within the life that goes on.
When the fog descended, silence settled over the village after the discovery of old Billy's departure. His notes were left stacked, serving as entertainment for the locals who chose to share them with others.
Number 043 Connection. This theme carries immense joy, as it deals with the union of elements that persist in expanding the best in all of us. When I first became aware that I was in the desert many years ago, I was riding safely and calmly on a strong Arabian horse that seemed to know the way home. Along with us, there was another man whose identity I still cannot remember. We kept a steady pace, but without pushing the rhythm. From the little we carried in the saddlebags on the horses, I could tell that our mission was to travel a short distance, and it didn't seem like we were far from our destination, which caused that peculiar anxiety to arrive quickly. As is common in these crossings, we hardly exchanged words as we followed the path, but in compensation, the mental movement was extremely high, and thoughts spiraled around the world before launching into outer space. It was very pleasant, a kind of trance that should not be interrupted because, according to the natives, that would open the door to fear. I noticed a change in our steps. My companion pointed to the left, and I couldn't identify what that dark spot on the sand might be. Soon he said, "Al-Bedouin, inhabitants of the open lands." Nothing that could affect our tranquility. I even felt the fear of interrupting the trance, but it was just a scare. Bandits don't group in such large numbers. I quickly calculated more than 300 heads, plus the animals. Someone on the other side raised a kind of flag, which was a request to approach, and we changed direction toward them. Upon arrival, the substitute leader or sub-sheikh welcomed us directly and objectively, saying, "We came for water." I tapped the water jar tied to my saddle, and from the reverberating sound, I calculated it had at most 2 liters. Immediately, I offered what I had and apologized for not being able to do more. I expressed my regret for their condition and prayed to God to look after them. My traveling companion offered the same. I felt deep emotion and a great frustration at the impotence in the face of such lack of resources. The desert world is not like the rest of the world. I wished I could call someone, get a water truck to deliver drinking water. My thoughts raced, and I was already praying for a helicopter to take me back to any city. Sweating cold, I asked myself why I had ended up here. In the middle of a 48-degree desert, I was shivering from the cold. How could I save 350 people and their animals with less than 2 liters of water? I was about to collapse off my horse when something more than strange, yet full of certainty, flooded my mind. It wasn't just a thought, it was the voice of my own soul speaking with firmness and undeniable authority. Be water. I don't know if I was hallucinating from the fever of fear or filled with light from the desire to help. So I looked into those eyes and told them that I would multiply my water like that guy did with the fish. Without thinking, I dismounted from the horse, untied the jar, and walked toward the Bedouins. Immediately, someone appeared extending a clay cup, and I poured the essential liquid of life into it. Soon came another and others. I felt exactly like someone learning to ride a bicycle and discovering how to balance on 2 wheels. And as such, when I thought I might fail, the fall came. I allowed doubt and fear to invade my mind, defying my soul and also the laws of the desert. At that moment, I fainted, losing consciousness. At the same instant, time also vanished into an improbable space. The clocks were spinning back and forth, the maps were swapping cities around, the sea was changing color in response to the solar prism, suggesting that life had come to a halt. It was a mess, like a misfired orchestra playing a tune that couldn't be heard by human senses. So, tired of trying to understand all of it, I mentally adjusted to the situation, convincing myself that the best course of action would be to forget about the whole episode. Many years passed, and in none of them could I truly silence my soul, telling myself that I'd really be able to quench those people's thirst. I remembered the joy of having the water leave the jug as it poured into the rudimentary cups held by those fingers full of hope and gratitude. What really happened, though? Would that jug really pour out enough water? My heart never doubted, but my mind always mocked such ignorance. Three decades later, the same fear that interrupted the help to the Nile Bedouin came arm in arm with doubt and dragged me to the brink of collapse. From using reason too much, I wore it out and ended up finding myself in the desert again. On foot, with no compass or supplies, I had only death to accompany me. Oddly enough, it was this same death that had introduced me to life. My skeletal friend and I just kept walking forward with no commitment to getting anywhere. She kept repeating, "It's life that goes on." I thought all that was a bit too strange. Still, "It's life that goes on," I repeated. I won't say how many times I had to die and be reborn on those sands. Eventually, I began to miss something heavy in my backpack, so I asked Death, and she said I had lost something, but that I wouldn't leave the desert until I'd lost much more. So I asked what had I lost. She kindly and cynically replied, "A bit of your fear, but it wasn't an accident." I just cut it off. Then proudly she showed me the shine on her gleaming steel scythe. After many harvests of my human condition, Death introduced me to a small oasis. "Here is your hole. It means you've stopped collapsing. You're far from getting out of the hole, so don't rush." My first encounter with an oasis, wow. I was already used to waking up and just following the life that goes on, without expecting to reach anywhere. But an oasis cannot be called a hole, it is a true paradise. An improbable space where life is made evident in every inch of the ground. Grateful, I exchanged a hug with Death, who left me there, still insisting on calling that place the happy hole. There, happy and grateful, I kept trying to understand why the term hole. I guess I'll never agree with Death's witty sense of humor and call that oasis a happy hole. For me, it was there that I filled myself with hope and understood the importance of desire, so I will always call it the oasis of gratitude. Thus, grateful, desirous, hopeful, and why not happy, I left the oasis in that unique people marked by the sun and obedient to the desert's own laws. And for the third time I entered the desert. I walked on, confident and free of the guilt and memories of the collapse. With me only the life that goes on. This third crossing was light, simple, and filled with mutual affection. The sands danced to say how much they would miss us. The wind dictated the routine of the celebration, and the sun clapped approving our joy. Yes, gratitude is truly powerful, and without a doubt, it was my predominant vibration. I didn't even care what would happen to me when I left the desert and had to face the laws of the civilized world again, because I already knew that even if I left the desert, it would never leave me. Once again, my chest swelled with gratitude, this time for adding meaning to another word, connection. So it happened, albeit, the people of the tent, was inside me. Every place felt like my home, and I had no home at all. Everything smelled of the transient, the temporary, the ephemeral. An oasis is not something you can forget, and the values and customs of the Bedouins only solidify in the present emergency moment, where the always is right now. I found myself to be an authentic man of the tents, and I felt proud of the collapse. Had it not been for it, I would still be someone following something, anything but the life that goes on. From so much hope and gratitude, I felt the desire to connect the fertile joy of those people with the rest of the world. I wanted to prove that there are no holes while there is hope in the miracle of life that offers shelter to those who walk through the scorching sands without fear of death and move forward with the life that goes on. Without making any decisions, I think just by feeling and vibrating in a certain way, I found myself in the desert for the fourth time. It didn't take long before Madame Death appeared with her usual grace. "Did you come to lighten your burdens?" she asked, making me notice the new handle of her scythe. "Always," I replied, forcing myself to control my lips that didn't want to stop smiling at the joy of the reunion. Thus, contrary to the usual silence, we spent a few months as if we were at a bar by the beach on a sunny Saturday. The only time Death got serious was when she informed me that I was on the wrong path and that it wouldn't help to look for a compass because I wouldn't reach the happy hole. I took a deep breath, wanting to hit her for insisting on that inappropriate name, but preferred to say that the oasis of gratitude was already within me and that I didn't need to find what had already found me. Cheeky," she exclaimed, shaking her slender bones covered in a robe totally out of fashion. "More respect, okay? It wasn't me who chose this outfit," she retorted as she read my thoughts. "One day we found a date palm sprout. Here," we both said at the same time. She left once again, promising to make an effort to be there when my final departure came. I sat on that ground, which was already slightly moist, signaling the main lake from which a new oasis would manifest. As we know, time in the desert follows its own laws, and I couldn't tell if all of this lasted 16 seconds, the normal measurement of a civilized thought, or if it was decades. The fact is, this new oasis was formed and abundant, like the beauty of grandmother's bread on Christmas Eve. When a traveler passed away, my friend, Death, reappeared to do her job. She took the opportunity to announce to me that a disease had settled in me, and soon it would be my turn to rid myself of all human burdens and continue the life that moves forward without this tired body. We toasted with our imaginary cups and went for a walk around the main lake, a second lake formed years after our arrival. Seductive and sexy, she placed her bony hand on my chest and, revealing admiration, said, "You overflowed from that hole, you floated out of it. You had to transform into water to achieve that. Water is life, and life never dies. Transform into water." The same words my soul had spoken when I was with the Nyal Bedouin. I exclaimed with joy and embraced my skinny friend without fear of breaking her. She pretended not to know the reason for my happiness, gently waiting for me to tell her the whole story about the water jar and so on. Then she had me feel the ground like nurses searching for a vein before inserting the needle. The sand then pulled me strongly, and I was plunged, amazed, into the circulatory system of the planet. I reached the heart, not without passing through major arteries and sweating through the tiniest pores. This was a gigantic lesson that cannot be detailed now. On my way back, I emerged in different places, needing to practice this until I mastered the art of carrying water according to my desire and promoting the connection between all worlds, because no matter the culture and differing values, everyone depends on water to continue the life that moves forward. I returned to the arms of Death, so full of life that I could overflow enough to return her to human form, By the way, this was the first time I saw her without her scythe nearby. I think she understood that I am ready to leave her side, and there will be no need to sever my ties with human density. Well, that will be for another time. The important thing is that I learned how to transform into water. I asked the messenger of life that moves forward, my friend Death, the only being capable of being by my side without criticizing, who, even when lowering her shining scythe against me, did so to relieve me of guilt, remorse, and other useless burdens. Anyway, how much more time would I have? And would I ever be able to return to the moment when the door of fear ejected me from fulfilling my desire to quench the thirst of those people? Surprised by the contradiction in my question, she replied by asking if I still hadn't learned about the laws of time in the desert, about what is past, present, and future. She clarified that we will have the chance to make any moment present by connecting with it. When we are affected by something, we are responsible for how it will be digested in our consciousness. But she also reminded me that there is the danger of getting indefinitely stuck to events we no longer have the capacity to experience or practice, in terms of adjusting or tuning the consciousness. In that case, only her scythe or a specific sword could help. Something a bit confusing that worsened each time we spoke of it. Anyway, I already knew I could reactivate something paused by fear. What I really wanted to ask was how to do it. She then made an effort to synthesize it into that key word, desire, specifically about the measurable time of how much longer I would stay in this incarnation. She became serious, almost angry. You know death doesn't exist. And you also know that your time to leave was already postponed once when you found that hole. I told you that due to an illness, your time to leave was announced. That's all. But pay close attention. Whoever wants to advance in time without a connection that affects them, that person will simply be wasting their mental and emotional health, feeding fear and a cycle of assumptions disconnected from themselves, from their own soul, and from the soul of the world. Somewhat regretting asking the question, I remembered the moment when I allowed doubt to take hold of me in the desert. This same thing had happened and repeated itself many times in my story, and the results were always to my disadvantage. I shook my head vigorously, apologized, and dove back into the veins of the planet. There, I accelerated with intent, seeking the feeling of a roller coaster ride. I let myself go on that ride until the tension grew tired of me, and when I surfaced, my friend smiled and joked, "That dive took no time at all." She was using the gauge of consciousness where 0 meant I cleared my mind even though I didn't advance anything. Anyway, I was happy because I had just learned that it's possible to clear my mind without wasting any time at all. We said our goodbyes. For a few more days, I stayed inside my tent, not wanting to lose the frequency of having discovered the possibility of opening springs of waters. Besides, there were still some difficulties in me, such as saving lives. After everything I'd experienced, this no longer fit into my story. That idea no longer resonated with me, and therefore couldn't be transformed into an authentic desire. I needed that stamp in my time passport. I had to align my intention with my desire. Only then could I reactivate a moment interrupted in the past. Not to mention that any such connection could only exist with the sterility of fear. Although my intention and desire were well aligned, doubts and some fears delayed me considerably. From one meditation to the next, I would enter and clear everything that was against reactivating that moment and helping those lives. However, the key really turned when I identified that 2 words were in the way: reactivate and save. By replacing them with one single word, I would be free to move on, and the word was the same one revealed earlier: connection. I would connect with, not reactivate something. It also wouldn't work if I wanted to reconnect because this prefix, re, brought another time into the equation and I could only count on the present moment. Similarly, I had to take the sickle to the concept of saving lives. This implied the presumption of making choices in someone else's place, and if I really wanted that contact, I would have to be clean, free, light, and unburdened, with the same state of consciousness that silence offers during horseback rides. I felt relieved with the refined alignment in my mind. I reinforced that there cannot be concepts of going back, remembering, or any more prefixes of repetition. The life that goes on happens in the present and expands without aiming for the future. It keeps exchanging the present for another expanded present but never falsified. I lay down ready to connect. Suddenly, I realized that water is already and in itself the greatest and most powerful network of connection that ever was or will be. Something so evident, ringing in the molecules of nitrogen and oxygen. In this cycle, there is really nothing that identifies disconnection at most minimal pauses. This eliminates the idea of past and also the idea of future. Water is always the expansion of itself, transforming without ever ceasing to be what it always was. Soon, ignoring all human laws and concepts, there I was holding that jar as if nothing had ever happened. When the notion of emptying made the jar lighter, I connected it to the spring of water of who I am, water, and the jar would return to its weight. Everything flowed like the life that goes on, and I felt that vivid desire to be there, pouring the best of myself in obedience to real nature, crowned by fearless surrender and the certainty that it will always be possible to dive into the life that goes on through the joy of knowing how to be part of it. All I did was connect points, the water to those who feel thirst through my recognition that everything will never cease to be connected, that occasional pauses are opportunities to participate in the expansion of life, and that this is enough. Connection is the key I was able to find most efficiently to favor the expansion of love/life. It's not a connection that we can make, but one that we can only recognize as something natural. Life does not wait for us to invent novelties. The life that goes on expands naturally into brilliant novelties in the composition of physical and chemical elements. It gives us all of this and connects its ideas to our minds, inspiration, so that we can expand our well-being. Everything always obeying the principles of connection arising from the need aligned with the desire to find surprises that help to follow the life that goes on. Nothing escapes this rule. Profession, family, relationships, finances. Everything intertwined by a network that connects, nourishes, and expands them. All that's needed is to be what is needed in each moment, to connect with the souls in everyone and become one conscious body of cooperation and balance. This is the will of life. Connection is life that goes on.
Old Billy's text, Connection, is a complex, metaphorical, and deeply personal narrative that explores themes of transformation, spiritual awakening, and the nature of reality. Here's a very short, broad analysis. Connection is a rich and complex narrative that explores profound themes of transformation, connection, and the nature of reality. The narrator's journey through the desert serves as a metaphor for the inner journey of self-discovery and spiritual awakening. The text emphasizes the importance of releasing fear and doubt, aligning desire and intention, and embracing the interconnectedness of all things. The use of vivid imagery and symbolic language creates a powerful and evocative reading experience. The message of the text is ultimately one of hope and empowerment, encouraging readers to connect with their own inner potential and contribute to the flow of life. Next, Ava will give you a philosophical and deeper analysis of this topic.
This Old Billy's text is rich with philosophical reflections that explore several key themes related to life, death, and the interconnectedness of existence. It touches on concepts of impermanence, spiritual transformation, and the essential role of connection in understanding our existence. Here is a philosophical analysis of the text. 1. The nature of connection. The central theme of the text is connection, which the author comes to realize is the underlying force of life. The narrative begins with a journey across the desert, a metaphor for life's journey, where the protagonist initially struggles with feelings of isolation and helplessness, as well as the inability to fulfill his desire to save others. However, he gradually discovers that the key to transcending fear and uncertainty is recognizing the connection between all things, human, natural, and spiritual. This philosophical perspective aligns with Eastern philosophies, such as Buddhism and Taoism, which emphasize the interdependence of all things and the idea that individual identity is ultimately an illusion. Everything is connected through the flow of life, much like water, which serves as a metaphor for unity, vitality, and transformation. The text argues that the greatest human achievement is not to control or save others, but to recognize and harmonize with the deep, interconnected web of existence. 2. The role of desire and gratitude. Desire and gratitude are also critical philosophical themes in the text. Old Billy explores the power of desire as a force that can align individuals with the flow of life. Desire here is not seen as a negative or selfish force, but as a motivational energy that propels individuals to connect with the world around them, whether it's the land, others, or their own soul. Gratitude complements this idea, as it is through gratitude that the protagonist learns to accept and embrace the present moment. Gratitude is a transformative practice that enables a shift from fear and doubt to acceptance and peace. In this sense, the text echoes the existential philosophy of figures like Soren Kierkegaard or Viktor Frankl, who suggest that meaning and fulfillment arise not from external achievements, but from our ability to accept the present and align with what is beyond us. 3. Death as a guide. Death, portrayed as a companion in the narrative, is an existential figure that represents both the end and the potential for rebirth. The recurring presence of death in the protagonist's journey invites a deeper reflection on mortality. Rather than seeing death as an adversary, the text frames it as a teacher that guides the protagonist through his fears, self-doubt, and ultimately to enlightenment. This approach resonates with the philosophy of mortality articulated by thinkers like Martin Heidegger, who argue that the awareness of death is central to authentic living. In the text, death is not feared but embraced as part of the natural flow of existence, reminding the protagonist to live fully and be connected to the present moment. 4. The illusion of time and the present moment. The text challenges conventional notions of time and memory, particularly through its exploration of past, present, and future. The protagonist's reflections suggest that time is fluid and subjective, especially in moments of existential crisis. The idea of reactivating a moment or saving lives is deconstructed as illusions. Instead, the text proposes that we cannot escape the present moment, and only through connection to the present can we achieve true fulfillment. This aligns with phenomenology, the philosophical approach that emphasizes the importance of lived experience over abstract concepts of time. By focusing on the immediate, present reality, the protagonist gains insight into his true nature and his connection with others. The oasis of gratitude, which the protagonist encounters, symbolizes the eternal present, a space of peace, connection, and understanding, free from the limitations of past or future. 5. Transformation and water as life. The metaphor of water is central to the narrative. It symbolizes life, nourishment, and transformation. Water, in many philosophical traditions, represents the continuous flow of existence and the fluidity of life. In the text, water is the medium through which the protagonist learns to align with his desires and the world around him. The text presents water as a unifying force, a means to transcend individual limitations and connect with others. This concept can be interpreted through the lens of process philosophy, as articulated by Alfred North Whitehead, which holds that reality is in constant flux and everything is interconnected through a web of processes. In this view, the transformation into water represents the protagonist's acceptance of life's impermanence and his integration into the flow of existence. 6. The illusion of control and the power of surrender. Throughout the text, the protagonist is confronted with the illusion of control. In the desert, when faced with the task of saving lives, he realizes that no amount of effort can truly save anyone. This realization is a key moment in the narrative, where the protagonist is forced to let go of his ego-driven desires to save and instead surrenders to the natural flow of life. This surrender is not weakness, but a form of spiritual awakening, the understanding that control is an illusion and life moves forward regardless of human intervention. This theme echoes Stoic philosophy, particularly the teachings of Epictetus, who emphasize the importance of accepting what is beyond our control and focusing our efforts on our own responses to life's events. The protagonist's eventual realization that he must connect with others rather than save them reflects this Stoic acceptance of the natural order. Conclusion. The philosophical analysis of this Old Billy's text reveals a deep engagement with themes of connection, impermanence, desire, and transformation. The text invites readers to reconsider their relationship with time, control, and death, ultimately urging them to align with the flow of life. Through the protagonist's journey in the desert and his interactions with death, he learns that true peace comes not from saving or changing the world, but from recognizing and embracing the natural connections that bind all things. This philosophical exploration underscores the importance of living in harmony with the present moment, surrendering to life's flow, and understanding that everything is interconnected.
Brian, Ava, my deepest gratitude to you both. I want to highlight that Connection stands out as a particularly celebrated story within Old Billy in the Desert of Us All, a collection that offers profound insights into what many consider abstraction. Thank you once more for your generous time and focused attention during this extended meeting. Thanks to all of you.